Hello, everyone. Hi. Thanks for watching. Once again, Gordon Causey. It's now 1:18 a.m. on the 23rd of October, and here is Candy the Wonder Pup, as as usual. And I have her treat. If I can find it. Oh, here it is. All right. Give me your paw. Lay down. Speak. Good. Standard beginning for this miserable, pathetic, unmonetized little YouTube channel where I try and discover some truth and speak it. Not promising I always get things right. I've gotten things wrong in the past, but I'm aiming for the truth. And going to be talking about what I've been talking about for the past 2 weeks or so. The situation, the evolving situation in Israel, the battle between Hamas in the Gaza Strip and Israel, Hezbollah in the north in Lebanon. Now there are reports coming out now of a three-front war. Apparently Israel was hitting targets in the West Bank. Apparently there was, I don't know whether rocket fire was coming or whatever. It's very hard to keep up with. I've said before many times, I've enumerated how I see at least the potential for this to escalate into a much larger conflict, and the alliances, and how Hezbollah and Hamas are both sponsored by Iran, how Iran is allied with Russia, how Russia has a no-limits partnership with China, the Russians cozying up with North Korea. I mean, dominoes, can they fall? It's already being reported that within the last couple of days, U.S. military installations in Iraq, I believe in Syria, have been attacked. I read a story about some drones that were shot down by U.S. naval ships. They say that the drones come from, they believe, Yemen. And Yemen is an Arab country. And they believed that these drones were targeting Israel, and so they were shot down. Things are evolving rapidly and slowly. This ground invasion that they keep talking about, attacking from the ground, from land, sea, and air, it seems like they've been talking about it for at least a week now, and it still hasn't happened. Militaristically, I can understand that, having read more on the situation. This Gaza Strip is widely reported to be just about one of, if not the most densely populated enclaves in the entire world. And if you're going to go in, and with the objective being to strike back at Hamas specifically, and not just the civilians living, in the Gaza Strip, that how do you do that? I saw one speculative report saying that the Israelis would likely go in at nightfall, try and establish strongholds, try to entrench themselves within the Gaza Strip, and so that they could battle with the Hamas soldiers. But that Hamas, that there's a network of tunnels in Gaza that only Hamas has intimate knowledge of. They have home field advantage, as it were. I'm sorry to use something of a sports analogy, because this is not, it's a horrendous situation. And currently, one thing I'm noticing is that there's a lot of sympathy, broadly speaking, for the there are protests going on all over under the banner of Free Palestine. And I'm going to be upfront about the language I use and why I use it. I'm not a particular fan of the word Palestine. And the reason for that is the Ottoman Empire controlled that area right up until the end of right until World War I ended, 1918. So up until 1918, up until the defeat of the Ottoman Empire, this area of what is now Israel was controlled by the Ottoman Empire, and they didn't call it Palestine. It was it was the southern part of Syria when it was the Ottoman Empire, and that was 400 or 500 years. The name Palestine was actually given to this area by Roman Empire Hadrian, and Palestine at its root origin comes from Philistia, the Philistines, and Hadrian wanted the name of Israel erased from history. Didn't work. In 1948, the name Israel came back. But I've got my Bible here. I'm going to read a passage, and it's from Matthew, Gospel of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 6. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. And the key phrase that I'm highlighting on personally is, for this must take place. And I'm looking upon this and I'm saying, this must take place. I don't like it. No one likes it. No one should like it. I shouldn't say no one likes it. Some people do like war. There are individuals who for whatever reason, and I don't like this expression either, but I'm going to use it anyway. There are individuals, mostly men, who get off on war. They woohoo. I'm not like that. I saw on Twitter a video put out, and I can't vouch for its authenticity. Could be propaganda. But what the video portrayed, what was presented to be a young boy, probably no more than 10 years of age, and I have a 10-year-old, living in the Gaza Strip. And I can't begin to approach the emotion that was in his voice. I assume he was speaking Arabic, but it doesn't matter. You can still hear the emotion in his voice as he described a situation where I think it strikes me he was playing with his friends and cousins maybe, and and a rocket went off, or a missile or some ordnance went off around them, and he described picking up, I think it was a cousin, and his brain exposed or oozing out. And no 10-year-old should ever have to go through that. Palestinian, Arab, Jew, Christian, no child should have to go through that. And so we sit there and, I can understand. I understand why a lot of people have trouble with faith, because they say, how can an all-loving, we're presented with this God who is said to be all-loving, all-knowing, all-wise, all-compassionate, all these things. And yet, how can that happen? And then I look at the words of Jesus. I know what war is like. I was in the military, Canadian military. I never saw war, thank God. But I know enough people who did. For this must take place, the words of Jesus, for this must take place. And I know my history, not all of it, but I know history, just like everyone else. I know about World War II, World War I, Vietnam, North Korea, Afghanistan, Bosnia, the 7 Years' War, the Napoleonic Wars, wars. And they're horrific. And I know it's part of the human condition to want to assign who are the good guys, who are the bad guys. Who's the oppressed and who's the oppressor? That's a lot of the narrative in today's world, is we ask who is the oppressor and who is the oppressed, and the oppressor is the bad and the oppressed is the good. So we sit in judgment. We mount our thrones and we sit in judgment. But Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, this is toward the end of the Bible. Jesus is about to go to the cross and pronounce that it is finished. His work is finished. If you're going to go to the back, why not go to the start? And so I'm going to go right to Genesis. And it speaks to what I was just saying about how we climb up onto our throne and we sit in judgment and we say, these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. But if you go to Genesis chapter 3, verse 4, and this is right during the exchange between Eve and the quote-unquote serpent. And Eve has told the serpent that they can eat we can eat any fruit, any of the fruit in the garden, except for the tree in the middle there, the tree of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. And that God said, if we eat it, we will surely die. And so chapter 3, verse 4, but the serpent said to the woman, you will not die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened. You will be like God, knowing good and evil. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband, and he ate. Word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. God's way, man's ways are not God's ways. God's ways are not man's ways. We're a fallen creation. That's why we go to war. And it's easy to sit back and say, we like to make lofty proclamations about who's right and who's wrong, and that Christians will justify their views as being right because they'll pull out a passage and verse. I'm not going to do that because I'm on this side of the veil. The one thing I do know to be true is that this life is not the end. And I pray that understanding will come when I pass that veil. But I've said before, there are no winners in war, there are only losers. As I say, that video I was talking about, the one I said presented as, I don't know, it could be propaganda. Could be propaganda. The child was speaking Arabic. He could have been describing something else. I was reading English subtitles. I don't speak Arabic. I don't know the source of the video. But does this kind of thing happen in warfare? Yeah, it does. Even if that is in point of fact propaganda, even if that was from some other incident in some other country and it's been repackaged, which is something that happens. People do this all the time on the internet because it drives engagement. You find an old dusty video from something 10 years ago and you clean it up and you present it as something that just happened, and then your Twitter feed or your X feed, whatever it's called now, Twitter feed, gets hit 1,000 times, and your posts get shared tens of thousands of times or whatever, and woohoo, you get your little endorphin, your little dopamine rush to the brain because people are engaging with your content. But this kind of thing, these kind of tragic, horrible things happen in conflict, in military conflict. And the Bible says, the Bible prophesizes that there are this fallen creation that we live in, that the nation state of Israel, that it would be reborn. I read from it yesterday, Isaiah 11, verses 11 and 12, about how God will gather the scattered sheep of Israel from the four corners of the earth a second time. There are other passages about how, once God replants Israel, once God restores Israel, that it'll never again be removed. And we look at Israel when they got restored a second time, 1948, May 14th, and they were immediately attacked on the day after by 5 nations of the Arab League. And then 1967, I think that was called the Yom Kippur War, and then 1973. And each time Israel has taken territory, each time Israel has expanded its borders. And this notion of a two-state solution is never going to work, because from the Arab perspective, they want the extremists who are driving the bus, the extremists with Hamas, with Hezbollah and others, they want Israel wiped off the map. They want Israel no more. They want it, we talk about free Palestine. They don't want a two-state solution. The Arabs, they want Israel. The extremist element of the Arab population wants Israel driven into the sea, and for the entire region, for it to be an Islamic caliphate. Say it however you want. Likewise, there are those on the ultra-Orthodox Jews living in Israel who want the entire land for Israel. They want no Arab state ever. So this notion of a two-state solution, while it's nice and it sounds good, but this cannot happen. It's simply reality. And going back to what Jesus said in Matthew 24, all this must take place. And that's where I'm able to draw some measure of peace, some measure of comfort, some measure of solace in realizing God's ways are not my ways. This has to take place for what is to come, for God to restore this creation to what it was when there were no more tears, no more sorrow, no more pain, no more loss. You can read it, it's in the Bible. Anyway, I'm going to keep this one very short. I would say pray for peace, but there's a passage in Ecclesiastes, to everything there is a season, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to plant and a time to reap, a time to gather stones, a time to cast away stones, a time for war and a time for peace. And it strikes me that my desire for peace and most people's desire for peace, notwithstanding, this is a time for war. Doesn't mean we have to like it, but I almost wish it would take longer. I wish it would. I'm a jump in the deep end when the water's cold type of guy. I'm a rip the Band-Aid off kind of guy. Pull it off slowly. And I would almost like things to go faster and let's get this over with. But I think there's a reason why it's dragging out. I think this is God calling people home. God calling people to put their trust in Him, not to put their trust in Hamas, Hezbollah, Benjamin Netanyahu, Joe Biden, Justin Trudeau, not to put your trust and your faith in the powers of this world, but to put your faith, trust in the creator of this world. And I know that's an unpopular view in today's culture. We've been disconnected. But anyway, won't go on any longer. Comments are open. Love to see your thoughts. Love to engage. And God bless. If you want to like, share, subscribe. Yeah, I also get the little endorphin, dopamine rush. Not going to lie, but I try not to be driven by it. And with an unmonetized channel, that's. I wish I had something more encouraging to say, but we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. The only thing I see happening is escalation. Looks like the Arab world is getting drawn in. If the Arab world gets drawn in, how long will it be before Russia joins? How long will it be before China joins? How long before North Korea? We're talking in terms of China, that's 1.4 or more billion people. I don't know how many people are in North Korea, but I think their army has 1 million members. And Russia, of course, 230, 40 million people, and a large military there. Yes, they're involved in a war right now in Ukraine, but now we have the U.S. supporting Israel in their war and supporting Ukraine. How long before China decides to assert itself in Taiwan? This is not a war of flesh and blood, but this is a war of principalities in the spiritual realm. It's from the Bible as well. Anyway, God bless. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you in a night or two.